she gets involved in this, begins to feel uncomfortable, and then basically says to the man, I broke my leg, or I have cancer. Sorry, I can't meet with you virtually on such and such a date. And he's rejected, by this young girl, and begins to take it out on her and wants his money back.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Beneath the Law. My name's Gavin Ty. I'm here with my partner and friend, Stephen Teal. And
Hi, Gavin.
In these podcasts, Stephen, we get to talk about all the salacious and crazy cases that come to our attention. Some are more salacious and crazy than others. This one that we're about to talk about today really does top the salacious meter from my perspective, if there is such a thing.
It's off the end of the spectrum.
Yeah, and we were joking before we got on the podcast about how the world just seems to have lost its collective marbles, and how people seem to be doing crazier and crazier things, and not only doing crazy things, but then doubling down on them and tripling down on them and refusing to back off of what in any, rational mind would be irrational.
Well, social media is certainly creating a lot of people who can facilitate people doing crazy things. And, I'm just going to get a little bit, Gavin, here into the facts of this case. And this is about a concept called sugaring or sugar dating, where a website is created to link up generally older men with younger women, sugar daddies, the men, and the sugar babies, these younger women. And, I guess it's the new way of finding love in life, or it's one of the ways that you find in life. But this concept of sugaring is certainly very strange in that essentially it links up these young women with older men, and the men are, I guess, obligated, or they feel obligated to provide gifts or money to these young women. And so it's, giving them financial support. And it's very strange to me. I mean, I don't have any daughters. You've got young girls in your life, Gavin, and I'd be really worried as a father with respect to this whole concept.
Yeah, it's pretty. We used to call it creepy. It's pretty creepy. So let's just call it what it is. It's creepy stuff. And the case that we're going to talk about is actually interesting because the context always matters. But in this particular case, this was a Law Society of Ontario discipline decision where the sugar daddy was a lawyer. And interestingly enough, the whole context of the financial relationship between the sugar daddy and the sugar baby was really nothing more than color for what was the real issue before the tribunal in terms of breaches of the rules of professional conduct here in Ontario that govern all lawyers. So this is not a criminal case. There was nothing alleged here, as far as I know, that the conduct between this individual and the sugar baby, so to speak, was illegal. That was not an issue. What was an issue is the, frankly, crazy behavior of the sugar daddy following that. And maybe I can just quickly go over a quick gloss over the facts in this particular case. As you mentioned, this case arose from this individual on some website finding this relationship with this is purely venal and financial at its core, where the older gentleman gives the younger woman money or money's worth for I'm I'm not going to talk about why. It doesn't really matter. In this particular case, what was really strange, though, was that this particular gentleman claimed to have given this young lady something like $30,000 at various times. Now, what was curious was the ostensible reason for the gifts were apparently that the young lady claimed to have cancer and that she needed the money because she had cancer. And he claims that that was the ostensible reason that he gave her the money. Little suspicious about that, but in any event, that's what they said.
Yeah. So yeah. Just to interject there. So the entire relationship is basically a virtual relationship, and who knows what they're doing virtually online. The man, views this relationship as being serious, and that he's fallen in love with this young 18-year-old woman, and she gets very uncomfortable with the direction that this whole thing is taking, and who knows why she's put her name forward on this website to begin with, to get in this
30,000
relationship.
reasons.
Well, it could be a dare, who knows? But anyway, so she gets involved in this, begins to feel uncomfortable, and then basically says to the man, I broke my leg, or I have cancer. Sorry, I can't meet with you virtually on such and such a date. And he's rejected, by this young girl, and begins to take it out on her and wants his money back.
Well, he claims, now the claim was on his part that she led him to believe she had cancer.
Yes.
It turns out that she didn't have cancer, that she was lying to him, and that he felt ripped off and manipulated. And so he becomes quite aggressive in seeking his money back, making all sorts of threats against her, etc., of what he's going to do.
And her parents.
And her family, and he's going to basically expose her her online activities and embarrass her unless she gives him the money back. That leads to the sugar baby in this particular instance, these threats, retaining a lawyer. And the lawyer that says, stop, no more communication with my client, and the sugar daddy is not very happy about that. He starts, regardless of the communication from the lawyer, he continues to communicate directly with the now represented young lady. And he continues to make, and not only does he communicate with her, a quite nasty comments about the lawyer who is retained. Now, just backing up for a moment on that point, that's an important issue, because there is a rule of professional conduct in Ontario that is very, very clear that when you as a lawyer are aware that a party opposite is represented by a lawyer, you cannot speak to that party anymore. You must deal through that party's lawyer. Lawyers can't just ignore the fact that there is a client-lawyer relationship on the other side. They are professionally obligated to only have all communication through the client. And if you do not do that, if you choose nonetheless to speak directly to the now client of the other lawyer, you can be brought up on discipline charges. So that was primarily one of the grounds upon which the Law Society of Ontario prosecuted this individual, is that he ignored his professional obligations of communicating through counsel.
Right, and then there's also the other ground that while he was trying to get his money back, and there are different facts, certainly there is a bit of a civil case to this. There's also the Law Society Tribunal decision that he was seeking, $226 million in damages in court. That case got thrown out because he didn't start it in time, which is a kind of dry and boring technical legal issue. But then he wanted $100,000 or $200,000, and in seeking the amount of money, he was actually threatening the young woman that he was going to take it to the police. And lawyers are prohibited, as well by our rules of professional conduct, from threatening someone with a crime or to take a matter to the police when you're trying to settle a matter.
Sure.
So that's grounds number 2.
Well, it might be a crime in and of itself, because if you cannot threaten criminal proceedings to achieve a civil remedy, basically threatening somebody to say that if you don't pay me, I'm going to go to report a crime, that in itself is a crime. That is either obstruction of justice, or it is potentially extortion in terms of the victim. So that really wasn't before the Law Society panel either. But it's not only the fact that the fact that he was communicating directly with the client, and the fact that he was communicating quite inappropriately with that client in terms that he shouldn't have been speaking to at all. But he had some really choice things to say about the lawyer that she had retained. Some of them were quite actually humorous, and they were so crazy. He referred to him, I think, as the strip mall lawyer, or the or the Better Call Saul. The Better Call Saul lawyer. I mean, he did not have a high opinion of her choice in counsel, and so that's, I suppose, maybe justified in his own mind why he didn't have to deal through that counsel. But the Law Society was singularly unimpressed with this particular individual.
No, for sure. And, maybe, Gavin, you can take, what happened to him at the end of the day with respect to the Law Society hearing?
Well, it was kind of a joke. And we I say that because the conduct was so, in my view, so outrageous that the penalty that was meted out by the Law Society was merely a 1-month suspension from the ability to practice law. Bearing in mind that in the course of the case, this individual was no longer practicing law at all. This individual, I believe, was working as an investment banker or something at this point in time, although qualified as a lawyer, wasn't working as a lawyer. So I don't know how much he particularly cared about being suspended for a month from being a lawyer or not. But that was the ultimate penalty meted out, was a 1-month suspension.
Well, I think he certainly held himself out to the young lady as being a lawyer, and that, it sounded like he could help her with her ambition of one day going to law school and becoming a lawyer herself. And so I think he was proud, I think, of being a lawyer. He had a number of degrees, master's degree, and obviously quite intelligent individual to be achieving all of those academic accomplishments. But, what troubles me, I guess, Gavin, with respect to cases like this is the use of social media. And we've been talking about it here on this podcast, even though we've only done a few. But social media seems to be, a constant here in terms of how people, really become tigers over the internet or over emails, and how they bully people. And you wouldn't necessarily see that if you were talking to someone face to face,
or even on the phone.
Right. And
people become far more strident and aggressive, I find, when they're behind a screen than when they're actually speaking to somebody face to face.
Well, there's a loss of perspective, right? And the entire interactions from a social face-to-face encounter that is lost because you're just sitting, whether in your basement or wherever you are, just pounding away at the keyboard and, not reading what you're sending before you hit that send button. And, the perception at the other end when it's received is like, holy smokes, what did you just send to me? But, there are other issues, I think, involved here with respect to the entire relationship. It's a very, very bizarre factual scenario. But it touches upon issues of mental health, substance abuse at the end of the day. And I guess in terms of the penalty, the 1 month penalty seems to me very low, given the amount of emails that were sent to the young lady after the lawyer got involved, the very aggressive tone, and what he said about the quality of the lawyer. The 1 month sentence doesn't seem to fit the crime or the emails that were being sent. And so I guess the other factors were involved in terms of reducing that sentence must have been with respect to mental health issues or abuse issues. Did he apologize for what he had done?
He did. He did apologize, but then he apologized, and then according to the case, he promptly reasserted some of the views that he held. I think, look, it's pretty obvious from the nature of the conduct, in my opinion, that this individual had problems. I mean, they were seriously troubled individual, as you mentioned, apparently very accomplished person, academically, certainly. It looks like professionally as well. Had worked, as I understand it, as I mentioned, I think as an investment banker, etc., and was called to the bar. I mean, this is a person who is certainly highly intelligent, but clearly has emotional issues, perhaps aggravated by substance abuse or not, which may have explained the behavior somewhat. I mean, it's hard to explain it any other way than the behavior was, and I don't mean to use a pejorative term, but the behavior is crazy. So in that regard, the only real way to describe it is that this person was obviously suffering. Having said all of that, so I expect were the people that they were that were subjected to this behavior. And while that, it is certainly a mitigating factor when people are suffering from these types of issues. And I hope that this person has sought some assistance and help to get out from under whatever has driven them to that type of behavior, although I don't know that that's dealt with particularly in the decision.
My recollection of the decision is that I guess he was seeking some counseling with respect to the behavior, because, look, it's just not normal behavior.
I hope not.
Well,
I think it's becoming more normal these days. You see, if normal is synonymous with regular, it's certainly becoming more regular from what we've seen.
Well, look, it's you certainly see it a lot in the family law context, where you've got breakdown of marriages, or people have been together for a long period of time, separating from one another, and there's a lot of animosity, and people are out to get their former spouse, and they've got children, and how does that impact kids? When people, I'm going to say it, go off the deep end and go out of their way to make their former spouse look bad, because they, obviously people get tremendously hurt. And it sounds like from reading the facts of this particular case here with the sugar daddy was
not very sweet.
No, but, well, of course not. Well, if he was sweet, he got a bad cavity that certainly drove him to this kind of conduct, which, it was uncalled for, certainly. But, when you get involved in relationships, the emotional train just gets going and has a mind of its own, and goes downhill pretty fast, and runs everybody over that's in the way.
Yeah, one thing I will say is, in legal cases, and this is no exception, you mentioned in the family law context, certainly in the criminal context, and certainly in the regulatory context, such as this one where we're dealing with professional discipline, the courts and the tribunals that are dealing with these types of things, they really are looking at people on that person's worst day. This is we're examining behavior. I don't know this gentleman from at all. He may be, a lovely person most of the time, but what they examine in court cases, generally speaking, is bad behavior. Bad behavior is a very common topic in court cases, and we often see people on their worst day, and they're being judged by their worst behavior at the worst time. This person obviously had issues. This person obviously was suffering from some serious problems. They had an element of obsession in respect of this particular individual that wouldn't allow them to move on. How they got involved in the relationship in the first place is hard to understand. But at the same time, they did get involved in that relationship. It did lead them to this type of behavior, and it ultimately led them to a record which will be on the legal database for all eternity, where their worst day is there for the world to see for all eternity. And that will be, frankly, to a large extent, how this person may be remembered.
Well, that to me, Gavin, is always the key takeaway. In this day and age, print newspapers are, although they still print a newspaper, it's kind of a dinosaur in terms of the way people get information today. And everything is on the internet, and you're applying for a job somewhere. People are checking what your history is on Google. Have you been talked about before? And these things follow you wherever you go.
Yeah, the digital footprint doesn't get washed away very easily, and that we talk about that. The harm that can be done online is equal to that. That is part of the issue we talk about in many of our podcasts, online defamation, etc. The harm that can be done is so much more profound, frankly, than it was in former ages of media, because it's so much more accessible, it's so much more widely distributed, and as you point out, it is almost indelible in the sense it never goes away.
Yeah, it's this case really, I have a lot of sympathy for both parties involved. I have sympathy for the lawyer who was involved. I have sympathy for, obviously, the young lady who was subjected to this. But at the end of the day, the message has to be to people, be careful what you're getting into on the internet. Certainly the relationship of sugar daddy versus sugar baby, wow, that opens up a whole can of worms. You're opening up a Pandora's box when you get involved in those kinds of relationships. And you better go, if you're going to do that, you better go in with eyes wide open.
Yeah, unfortunately, that's true. The internet has enabled, to a significant degree, these types of human relationships have probably gone on for a very long time beforehand, but just enabled it and facilitated it to such a degree, and it really makes me wonder if we are really ready for the access to the internet as a species, if we're really ready as human beings, if our minds are really ready for the access that has been given by the internet. Certainly this gentleman wasn't. Certainly the results were tragic, as you mentioned, on all sides. I think that the outcome is a tragedy all around, but a cautionary tale nonetheless, as you put it, for all of us to remember that the online world is now to some extent the real world, and we need to be very careful and cautious and try to behave ourselves like decent people, both online and offline.
Well, anyway, it's a neat little case that leads to a number of issues that I'm always happy to discuss with you, Gavin.
The pleasure is all mine, and we try to do this live and in person, not sending each other nasty, derogatory emails. So thank you very much for listening to to our ramblings and musings about legal cases as we discuss them and try to get beneath the law and try and understand a little bit more of the facts and policies that go into many of the court decisions that we deal with. My friend, partner, Stephen Teal, thank you. Always a pleasure. And please send us your comments, feedback. As I said, we're new at this and we're working at getting a little bit better. And any topics, for example, that you're interested in our views on, we'd be happy to receive any comments, criticisms that you might have. Once again, thanks for listening, and please tune in again to another episode of Beneath the Law, because as we say, if nobody is above the law, then everyone is beneath it. Look forward to seeing you next time.